Placement is the process of choosing an appropriate series, level, and goal for a student new to Read Naturally Encore. Placement has two phases. In Phase 1, you test a student to identify an appropriate starting series, level, and goal. In Phase 2, you check data for the student's first 3 stories to make sure the initial level and goal challenge but don't frustrate the student. In this video, Ms. Wells will demonstrate Phase 2 by checking initial placement for some of her students. Ms. Wells has already placed her students and taught them how to work through the steps of a story. As they worked through the first 3 stories, Ms. Wells was present for the cold timing step to make sure the scores were accurate. Today, she noticed a couple of students finished their 3rd story. That reminds her it's time to check initial placement for any student who has completed 3 stories. To begin, Ms. Wells collects her students' folders with their fluency and comprehension graphs. Then, she opens the Read Naturally Encore Checking Initial Placement Calculator on the Read Naturally website. To get to the calculator, Ms. Wells goes to readnaturally.com, searches for Encore Checking Initial Placement Calculator, and then clicks the link to the calculator. The calculator makes it easy to check initial placement for students using Encore. You can also check initial placement manually using the instructions in the placement packet. Now, Ms. Wells checks the graphs in her students' folders to identify which students have completed 3 stories. First, she finds Cabe, a 6th grader. Ms. Wells transfers his data to the calculator. She begins by entering his grade, series, and level. Then she enters Cabe's goal on the most recently completed story and verifies the number of stories that he's completed. The calculator averages the scores for the student's most recent 3 stories. Using the average helps smooth out variations that can occur from story to story. So, Ms. Wells enters the values for the cold timing, number of practices, hot timing, and quiz questions correct for the most recent 3 stories. She checks that she's entered the data correctly to be sure she gets the right recommendations. As soon as the data is entered, the calculator displays a recommendation for the level and for the goal. Let's understand why the calculator made these recommendations. When checking initial placement, first check whether the level is appropriate, and then, if necessary, check the goal. To see if the level is appropriate, ask, does the average cold timing score fall within the initial placement range for the level? And did the student answer at least 60% of the quiz questions correctly? With the answers to these questions, Ms. Wells can use this table from the calculator to understand the recommendation. Cabe, a 6th grader, has an average cold timing score of 81 words correct per minute. This score falls within the placement range for his level, 5.6. On the quizzes, he got 70% correct on his first try. Ms. Wells compares these results to the table. Cabe's average cold timing fell within the placement range, and his quiz results fell between 60 and 79%. So, the table suggests that Ms. Wells shouldn't change his level for now, but she notes that because the quiz percent correct was less than 80%, she'll need to work with Cabe on comprehension. Cabe's level will continue unchanged, but what about his goal? The calculator recommends continuing the goal as well. Let's find out why. To check the initial goal, ask, how close is the cold timing to the goal? How close is the hot timing to the goal? And, on average, how many times did the student practice? For students in grades 1 through 4, the average cold timing should initially be about 30 words less than the goal. For students in grades 5 and above, the average should be about 40 words less than the goal. Our 6th grader's average cold timing is 39 less than his goal, so this data indicates that his goal may be appropriate. The hot timing should be no more than 10 words greater than the goal. Cabe's hot timing also suggests his goal is appropriate. Finally, consider the average number of practices. Students typically need to practice 3 to 10 times to reach their goal. Less than that, and it's not challenging enough. More than that might lead to frustration. Cabe's average number of practices falls within the suggested range. Note the number of highlighted cells in each column. All the results indicate the goal is appropriate, so the calculator suggests CABE should continue working with the same goal. Now, let's consider another student, Bree, who has completed 4 stories, but Ms. Wells hasn't checked her initial placement yet. Ideally, she would have checked initial placement after the 3rd story, but she can still check Bree's placement until she's completed 6 stories in the level. After 6 stories, the recommendations won't be valid. Ms. Wells transfers Bree's data to the calculator. Bree, a 4th grader, was initially placed in sequenced level 3.5 with a goal of 90, and she's completed 4 stories in the level. Because she's completed 4 stories, Ms. Wells is careful to enter the scores from Bree's last 3 stories in the calculator. Bree's average cold timing fits within the placement range, but she answered less than 60% of her quiz questions correctly. So, the calculator recommends that Ms. Wells lower Bree's level. Lowering her level may help with her comprehension, but Ms. Wells should still pay attention to Bree's quiz results and provide additional support if necessary. Before Ms. Wells lowers the level, she discusses the change with Bree, so she won't be surprised with a new level the next time she begins work. Some students may feel discouraged if their level is lowered. Ms. Wells reassures Bree that she originally put her in a level that's too hard, and now they're just correcting that mistake. Ms. Wells prepares a new packet of stories for Bree's new level. She'll also need to change Bree's goal because she'll be working at a different level of difficulty. When Bree completes the cold timing on her first story in the new level, Ms. Wells calculates the new goal. To do this, she adds 30 to the cold timing score, and then rounds down to the nearest 5. If Bree was in 5th grade or above, Ms. Wells would instead add 40 to her cold timing score before rounding. Again, Ms. Wells discusses this change with Bree so she's aware of her new goal. After Bree completes 3 stories in the new level, Ms. Wells will check her placement again. Let's look at one more example. Patrick, a 3rd grader, has completed his 3rd story in level 2.0. His cold timing score is within the placement range for the level, and his quiz percent correct is above 80%. So the calculator tells Ms. Wells that level 2.0 is appropriate for Patrick. Since his level isn't changing, the calculator also checks his goal. It recommends raising the goal. Why? Patrick's goal is 75, and his average cold timing is 56, a difference of 19. This result indicates the goal may be set too low. Patrick's hot timing is more than 10 above the goal, another indication that the goal may be set too low. Finally, Patrick's average number of practices is between 3 and 10. 2 items indicate Patrick's goal is too low, and 1 indicates it's appropriate. To calculate Patrick's new goal, Ms. Wells adds 30 to the cold timing score because Patrick is in 3rd grade. Then she rounds the result down to the nearest 5. Before she raises the goal, Ms. Wells discusses the change with Patrick to make sure he's aware of his higher goal. You've just seen examples of how to check the initial level and goal for students who've completed 3 to 6 stories in Read Naturally Encore. See the placement packet for more information about checking initial placement.